off Ryback and kick him off this wave of momentum on his proverbial surfboard, which he's been cruising on ever since winning the Intercontinental Championship back to Elimination Chamber. And what I gotta say was a really impressive Elimination Chamber match from all the Elimination Chamber matches we saw at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view this year. The Tag Team Turmoil Elimination Chamber match for the Tag Team Championships was a great match, but despite how great the Tag Team Turmoil match was, the Intercontinental Championship Elimination Chamber match really made up where the other Elimination Chamber matches didn't offer us a whole lot. We had a significant amount of talent from Dolph Ziggler to Rusev to King Barrett to R-Truth in that match, and the one guy who I didn't think was going to win the match, Ryback, emerges victorious, but I didn't notice the emphasis that was on Ryback in the match. My favorite to win the match actually was either Dolph Ziggler or Wade Barrett. Out of all the competitors we had in the Elimination Chamber match, definitely I was favoring King Barrett and R-Truth and people like that to win the match more so than I was Ryback, because I didn't think there was a great deal of emphasis on Ryback. There was just way too much focus on his career and how he had really paid his dues as the Silverback in 2004 from one of the first original Tough Enough, the $1 Million Tough Enough, the only $1 Million Tough Enough we saw, won by Daniel Puder. Of course, he was sent home, and then he went back to OVW. He had been repackaged several times as Skip Sheffield as part of the original Nexus back in 2010, fired again, repackaged again, and comes back as Ryback. You could have seen this coming, but I refused to believe into it or buy into the idea of Ryback being Intercontinental Champion because I thought that Ryback wasn't ready for that opportunity. He wasn't popular enough, and definitely his popularity has exceeded the expectations of a lot of people now as Intercontinental Champion. So only good things will happen now for Ryback, be it that he's Intercontinental Champion for the first time in his career. There you see the graphic of Ryback holding up the Intercontinental Championship on what I guess was an edition of Monday Night Raw. That's an actually really nice photo that was taken by a fan in WWE and posted on various wrestling news websites. I think it puts an exemplification just how great of a wrestler Ryback really is. And I'm saying this, I'm going to go on a record and say that Ryback is definitely deserving of being Intercontinental Champion, just as Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Bret, and Owen Hart were back in the 90s. Some of the all-time greats used the Intercontinental Championship as a stepping stone, so it kind of makes you wonder if Ryback will do the same thing as a Mr. Perfect, as Shawn Michaels, or Bret Hart, or Triple H, or Stone Cold Steve Austin, who used the Intercontinental Championship to eventually go on to achieve something far greater in their career as champion. And is this a paving way, a paving road, a way for Ryback to pave the road to success to becoming champion down the road? I think it would be a great way for Ryback to propel his career to heights that people wouldn't expect Ryback to get to, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if 2 or 3 years from now, after being Intercontinental Champion for this long, Ryback is WWE World Heavyweight Champion, or at least a top consideration to be champion, just as he was when he first came back out of WWE and feuding with people like CM Punk and John Cena over the strap, which he didn't get. He got a couple of feuds in there with Punk and Cena, but he didn't get a chance to be champion, and I thought by Survivor Series of at least 2012, he would have been champion in that triple threat match with Punk and Cena, but obviously Punk and Cena were the ones who had their socks shot through the roof and were the ones that had the attention on them, along with the 434-day reign that Punk had at the time. So obviously Ryback was heading down a different road, and obviously this road has gave Ryback more success than he's had in his entire career. No matter how long this reign lasts, I think it's a reign that's gotten to a point that will be remembered by wrestling fans, and that's really what you want to get in a championship reign, is to a point where fans are going to remember you. For instance, when Randy Orton had the Intercontinental Championship, and he used it as a stepping stone to go on to become champion in the same year he lost the Intercontinental Championship. It's a great reign that Randy Orton had, and it was one of the longest reigns since the Honky Tonk Man at that point in that era of wrestling history. And he feuded with everyone from Edge to John Cena over the Intercontinental Championship. It was a great reign that Randy Orton had. It's a reign that fans remember because it was one of the first major titles that Randy Orton had achieved in his career, feuding with people like Rob Van Dam and Edge over the Intercontinental Championship, and always finding ways to come out on top and always retain the Intercontinental Championship. And that's what I hope to see from Ryback, always finding ways to come out on top and always finding ways to retain the Intercontinental Championship, to really etch his name on the wall in WWE headquarters as one of the greatest champions and Intercontinental champions within that division for the last at least 25 through 30 years. Of course, the original Intercontinental Champion, Pat Patterson, won the championship a number of years back, the first Intercontinental Champion, which started a history of a championship and a division that definitely etched its name and reputation in the wrestling business, and we've seen so many great Intercontinental Champions in the past. Do I think Ryback is as great as an Intercontinental Champion as a Bret Hitman Hart or a Stone Cold Steve Austin or a Shawn Michaels? No, I don't, and that's an easy question for me to come up with an answer to, because I don't think Ryback has gotten to that point in his career, and it's going to take Ryback some time before he does get to that point of his career where he's a champion just as good as a Bret Hart or a Steve Austin, who held the Intercontinental Championship back in the 90s when the Intercontinental Championship Championship was meaningful, because I don't think the Intercontinental Championship has as much meaning. It has more meaning than it had probably 5 years ago with the Retro Intercontinental title being brought back. Of course, Cody Rhodes bringing back the Retro Intercontinental title when he won it a number of months ago, and really brought a lot of prestige back to the Intercontinental title, the same title his brother Goldust, Dustin Rhodes, had held. Really don't know what's up with Cody Rhodes' career, posting videos about how people are morbidly obese now on Facebook. If you didn't see that video, it's really ridiculous how Cody Rhodes is very opinionated about that. And I have an opinion about that, which I'll get into on a future video blog, which is ridiculous. Cody Rhodes shooting on how people are too lazy to cook a meal. What are you getting on with? Definitely, your days of dashing Cody Rhodes are over with, and your days of being Intercontinental Champion are obviously over with. And obviously, the death of your father has really gotten to you, to the point where you had to get on YouTube and Facebook and shoot on people for being morbidly obese. Really, I mean, you were one of the best Intercontinental Champions we've seen in years. You brought back the Retro Intercontinental title, and this is what you're doing, and talking about bullying to really rub it in our faces about how bullying is an issue that's always going on, very relevant in these years, and there's nothing that really can be done about it, no matter how much we campaign for it. It's ridiculous how some Intercontinental Champions have turned out. So obviously I'm hoping that Ryback is going to turn out a lot better than people like Cody Rhodes and other people who've held that Intercontinental title. What's interesting about the Intercontinental Championship is there may not be as much significance on it as there was in years prior, especially back in the 90s, or much meaning for the Intercontinental title, but the Intercontinental title is still being used as a stepping stone and something to really stand out when you really have nothing going on for your career. It may be a level down from being world champion, and people who were formerly world champion being busted down out of that level have really got to be feeling, probably I should still be on top, and I probably could be doing better. Maybe this is a lackluster way for the company to really put me over in the way of Daniel Bryan. I mean, things really seem to be going Daniel Bryan's way in 2015. He came back. He entered the Royal Rumble with so much promise to win the match and go to WrestleMania. He feuded with Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns knocked him off in a number one contenders match to take the match with Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 31, which he ultimately lost, which was changed to a triple threat match. But still, things seem to be going Daniel Bryan's way. And then all of a sudden, then he goes from being possibly in the championship match in the main event of WrestleMania with Brock Lesnar in a dream match that fans have wanted to see for years, talking about what would ever happen if Daniel Bryan faced Brock Lesnar for the championship in the main event of WrestleMania. It would be very different from the triple threat match we saw in Triple H and Daniel Bryan feuding over who went to the main event of WrestleMania at WrestleMania 30. We didn't get to see that. Rather, we saw Daniel Bryan put in a ladder match with so many contenders, from Dolph Ziggler to R-Truth over the Intercontinental title. Even Luke Harper was in that match, and I didn't think Daniel Bryan was going to win the match the way that he did, but he came through in the match and obviously rebounded off of his injury. And it's just unfortunate, every time Daniel Bryan wins a championship, he goes down with a major injury. And obviously Ryback looked at this as a tremendous opportunity to have momentum finally on his shoulders, and he utilized that potential he had along with that momentum to get to this point in his career where finally now he has a championship and finally he has a reason for being in WWE. And I also like the promos where Ryback is connecting with wrestling fans. We never hear enough of that. We hear a lot of it from John Cena. Obviously we have to, because he's the face of the company, and you would expect to hear that from John Cena. But I really like how Daniel Bryan and Ryback and so many others are connecting with fans in these promos where they say the reason they are here is because of the fans. And if it wasn't for the fans, people like Daniel Bryan and Ryback wouldn't have a reason for being with the company. So I really appreciate these promos that allow wrestlers like Ryback and Daniel Bryan to connect with wrestling fans, and I hope they keep going down that road where they use these promos to connect with fans, because it really brings the best and real great image out for people like Ryback and Daniel Bryan, who can never get enough of publicity in the way of positivity. And I think these promos allow people like Ryback and Daniel Bryan to connect with wrestling fans a lot of the time, and it really does them a world of good to connect with fans and really tell fans how they feel. And definitely Ryback is definitely emotionally connected with fans because of how hard he worked to get to a point in the wrestling business. And in my opinion, Ryback is someone who wants to be a wrestler, someone who wants to be there all the time. He's not a Brock Lesnar or a Dwayne Johnson who just comes in for the money and just comes in for probably 3 or 4 appearances a year to WrestleMania and wrestles probably once or twice a year in the way of an Undertaker or a Rock. He's there because he wants to be there. He's there because he's not there for the money. He's there just to make a name for himself in the business and for fans to remember him. And I think a great way for him to be remembered is be a devoted and dedicated Intercontinental Champion, defending the championship night in and night out in the way of John Cena, which is why I give John Cena credit for being U.S. champion and defending the title night in and night out when he had the United States Championship, defending it night in and night out. It was great for John Cena, and it was great for the division, and I hope they keep doing it for divisions like the Intercontinental and Tag Team divisions, where they put the champions on display, either defending the titles or not defending the titles in non-title matches week in and week out. I think it does a world of good for divisions to have championships defended at least once a month on pay-per-view and have challengers changed up all the time, rather than seeing the same 3 or 4 challengers all the time. For instance, we saw The Miz and The Big Show pose a threat to Ryback's Intercontinental Championship at a recent pay-per-view. I think that was a great way of shaking things up in the Intercontinental Championship division. Former Intercontinental Champions, The Big Show and The Miz in their own right, going up against the current Intercontinental Champion Ryback in a match that put Ryback in a proverbial and impenetrable corner where there didn't seem to be any way out of it for him. And I think the unpredictability of the Intercontinental title division was really changed up when we saw a triple threat match. Let's see more unpredictable matches like that happening for people like Ryback and champions of the future, because I think that will get the focus on the Intercontinental Championship division. Again, there's so much that can be done with divisions like the Intercontinental Championship, and it's just a matter of really shaking it up and being far more creative with the division than you have been in recent years, because really the Intercontinental Champion was just there in years prior to this year and other years probably in the last 3 or 4. The Intercontinental Champion was kind of just there and he had no significance. But now the Intercontinental Championship and the champion, whoever the champion is, has a lot of significance and has a lot of pressure, obviously, on his shoulders to defend the championship and represent the company as Intercontinental Champion, just as Steve Austin, Bret Hart, and countless others had the chance to when they were champion and had that pressure on them back in the 90s. There's a lot of pressure with being champion because you're one of the poster childs of the company at the point that you are champion and you've reached a milestone in your career that you worked years to get to. Obviously, when Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels had the Intercontinental title, they felt the same way because it was an honor to be Intercontinental Champion back then and there was meaning out of the championship. But I think what they're trying to do is get to a point where there's still meaning for the Intercontinental title rather than looking back at the history video packages of how many champions we've had be the Intercontinental Champion within the division. And I think that Ryback is doing a great job defending the title and representing the company as Intercontinental Champion. It's a great idea from creative, and I hope they keep it. It's definitely feeding time for the Intercontinental Champion Ryback. He still has a long way to go to achieve a reputation in this business, but he's slowly but surely getting there. And I think if there was a time to be a fan of Ryback, the time to be a fan of Ryback is now, because Ryback is on top. He's definitely ascended to the top of the WWE, and